Hey, everybody, this is Ben, and welcome to a special discussion here on Cinema Gulp to talk about what I think is the best film I've seen in quite some time, Pig. And here to join me on this discussion is YouTube creator, co-host of Midnight Metal over at the Burrnetwork. It's the lovely Rrr Mmmm. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for coming on and wanted to discuss Pig, because I think through some of the channels and through some of the chats, I kind of got the idea that maybe you were the only other person aside from myself that saw this movie. And, you do such a great job of analyzing film on all your other things, Midnight Edge, Burnettwork. It's great to have you talk about Pig. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So this is a Neon movie. Briefly, if anybody doesn't know Neon, I'm a huge admirer of their films. I love that them and A24 basically are keeping the independent spirit alive. Neon has movies like Ingrid Goes West, which is incredible, I, Tonya, which is incredible, and Colossal, which is just a bonkers movie. They let young voices speak and make original content. And I think that Mike Chernosky, who directed this movie, is really someone who I hope has a big future as long as he keeps making stuff like this, because I just wanted to talk about Pig because the title of this video is I Can't Stop Thinking About Pig.
Yeah, this film it started off as quite a sleeper, didn't it? We were kind of titillated by this trailer that had sort of what seemed to be somewhat of a fantastic story. You have this person, this character that seems beaten almost, and very kind of broken, and this pig that seems to be his friend or companion of a sorts, and this relationship that they have that turns into quite an adventure that you can't imagine. If you're going in to see this film, you don't get that from the trailer, and that's okay. I'm fine with it because this film has just been incredible.
I try not to watch too much marketing. I'll give it, I want to see what it is, so obviously I'll watch a trailer, but I try not to overanalyze a trailer, especially these days when it comes to Nicolas Cage films, because you really don't know what you're going to get. Yeah, you're so right. Like it's an adventure, but it's so much of I hate to say spiritual adventure, but that's what it is. And it's not a revenge thriller. I actually laughed out loud after seeing the movie, and I saw a trailer that had this thriller music, and I'm like, no, what are you doing? Like, it's so not the movie. It's so not the movie. This movie is like haunting and beautiful and thoughtful, and it's intelligent people speaking. And I don't know about you, but I was a little worried at the beginning when Alex Wolff's character, who we'll get into because he is awesome and he gets so much to do, but there's a little bit of the movie where Nicolas Cage's character is not speaking, and I'm like, oh no, don't be another one of those. I didn't want it to be one of those, and thank God it just rolls itself out at this perfect pace and lets everything kind of come in and breathe. And
that did cross my mind. And while I am a huge fan of movies where there isn't a lot of talking, but just sort of emotionally charged scenes, where you might see patterns or pictures and expressions on faces and exchanges, but no words. I didn't get that initially from this film because he's with this pig. A lot of times in stories, when something abrupt happens in, let's say, the first 10 minutes, the flow can be very jarred and not, go right for the film. But this one hit it right on the mark. He had this sort of peaceful, tranquil existence, and then all of a sudden something jars him from this. And that thing that jars him from that is the thing that's going to make him face a lot of things in his life that he hasn't had to deal with for quite some time.
An interesting thing, Michael Sarnowski, who directed this, started out as an editor, and it really shows, really shows, because I think he's obviously in the cutting room during this movie. The decision to, because there's promotional stills out there that would suggest there's a lot more of Nicolas Cage and the pig in the opening. I love the decision to just establish the relationship and then sort of pull it away, because it's all you need. And the guy's name was Patrick Scola, who shot this movie. What did you think of the cinematography? Because I love the intimate stuff as much as the pullback stuff. It was great.
Well, I think that it showed the beauty of the state of Oregon. I mean, was that the location, Ben?
Yeah.
It really did show the beauty of it. And while we hear a lot of stories, for those of us who aren't familiar with that part of the country, boy, it sure shined in this film. Regardless of the tension or the mood, anybody would want to live there. I mean, it looks like a paradise. And despite the emotional situations that we see on the screen, boy, the town is just shining in beauty, and it was nice to see that.
Who would have thought? I had no idea that downtown Portland had such an underground, dark underbelly world of culinary arts, but it was fascinating stuff. That's while we're talking about the originality of this movie, like, we're talking about the pig, the relationship between Rob, his name is Rob, and the pig. But this movie is really about, I'm not stealing this because I feel the same way, but I know other reviewers are saying the same thing. Every time he learns something, and this is why I can't shut up about the screenplay of this movie.
Yeah.
It's tight because it's working on 3 different levels all at the same time. It's making sure the audience is enjoying what's happening. It's making sure we're staying right there with Rob. But then every time he is discovering something, he's peeling back new things about himself that it's not broadcasted. It just shows up in the next scene. He goes through such a great character arc in this movie. And again, it's all in that writing. I mean, the direction's great, and Nicolas Cage is phenomenal in this movie. But God, the writing is just the way you can do that and just peel things apart bit by bit by bit. And his face gets more disheveled and he gets dirtier the more and more stuff that happens, the more he gets closer to finding his answers, and the more he's coming to terms with things. Yeah.
Well, if this screenplay were, a restaurant, this would be a Michelin 5-star, wouldn't it?
God. Yeah, it sure would. Like one of the restaurants that he worked at. Yeah.
Absolutely, and look at how wonderful this character development is in this film. We have complex characters. Finally, there's no lightweights in this. Even for a few minutes when we have a scene where Robin is sitting down next to a child. And the lovely metaphors of when they were talking about that persimmon tree, and the child kind of confides with him and says, well, did it die? I mean, the level of screenplay writing in this is the level of excellence that you see in an expert screenwriter. So it was enjoyable to watch these scenes. It was enjoyable also to see how the main character managed to traverse the scene of gastronomy in the town. And like what you said, who knew there was this underbelly of things
Nightclub.
Right, the nightclub, the hidden features. I don't know whether this is a spoiler one, but the hidden locations, the secret interactions that he had to do in order to get to the next phase, and then to the next phase. And there's even a point where he's almost told to give up. The person says, you know what, you should just give up. What you're trying to do is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that the determination in the Robin character is exactly the determination almost of the human spirit.
Right.
Because we have characters in the story that are suffering from loss, they have pain, and they don't know where to go with that. They don't know what direction to go in to figure out what the next step is for them. So our main character is almost at a point where his life stopped for a long time. And now he's finally sort of like, it's a metaphor for him to be able, maybe he's not going to get over this pain, but he's learning that he can live with it now and begin again. And I love the relationship that Robin had with Amir in the story.
Yeah, beautiful.
It was beautiful. The actor Amir, I just saw him in another film called Old. I think his name is Wolf.
Alex
Is it
Wolf,
Wolf?
yeah. I saw Old too. He was good in that as well. Yeah.
He gave a wonderful performance, and I think that, you know, his role was not an easy role to play, because he kind of comes off as this, you know, this, I'd say spoiled young man who, you know, hasn't had it exactly easy, but, you know, it has anxiety because of what the world has given him, what he's been sort of having to deal with as a young man, when a lot of times you would have a parent looking after you in those situations.
Yeah.
So you know, while you were right about how they revealed things, you know, this is not the type of story that you would want someone to read off all the details to you to reveal, you know, what's happening. They didn't do that here in this screenplay. It's a mature, realistic view of individuals dealing with loss.
Absolutely. And Amir is a great example, again, because we're talking about how good the story structure is and how everything in the screenplay works. It also goes above and beyond to give so much respect to every character that walks on screen and has it one frame of screen time. Amir is written so great. Both of these characters, both of the two leads, completely start out different than they end up by even the halfway point, and then of course the end. Alex Wolff, like when he shows up, I don't know how much he's going to be in this. I didn't know he was the second lead, really, because I didn't know much about the movie. When he comes in, he's just going to be a one-dimensional guy who rips off Robin, and he's, hey, later, asshole. And it's like, no, that's not who he is. Like, there's so much going on, and the script was so sweet and letting him have his own journey and have just as much of an arc by the end of it, when you just didn't even know what was he going to be a plot device, what was really going to be his story. And he got a full story too, obviously, as did Robin. And you were talking about that where Robin's almost told to give up. He's almost threatened and given that ultimatum at that point. And I love that, because this is not a revenge cage rage Nicolas Cage thriller.
Right.
Nicolas Cage in that scene does something so extraordinary as his sort of his Hail Mary to see if this last thing can work. And it's thoughtful, and it's intelligent, and it's very sweet and respectful to someone who just kind of threatened him and treated him like a piece of shit. And it's also followed up by a beautiful scene of culinary mastery. You know, that scene's beautiful and made me hungry, you know. So.
Well, you know, we're going to have to start calling Aronofsky and his partner, I think Vanessa Block, who I guess they wrote the script together, the kings and queens of metaphors, because there were so many colorful metaphors in this story. And while it's true that the film focuses on individuals who deal with gastronomy, we are also seeing metaphors in other ways. For example, where the Robin character and the Darius character kind of like have a very similar situation in the sense of loss. And, you know, and of course, as you are already aware, if you've seen the film, Darius's situation is a bit more complicated. But both of these gentlemen are experiencing, you know, one of the most painful things that you can ever go through. And at one point, I remember, I believe it was either Darius or Robin who says, well, did you act this way when you experienced this loss? And he comes right back at him. Did you? You know, yeah. And it was like such a powerful moment, because, you know, clearly they both are, you know, you're not going to get people who are going to say, well, I'm dealing with this loss, and so am I. No, it doesn't work like that in life. No. You know, you have these encounters where you meet people, and, you know, you make these connections, and then you feel comfortable enough to go to the next level with them. And I think that even though this situation, as we said, was incredibly complicated, it felt very realistic. And because we didn't see characters like, for example, Amir knew Robin because he was working with him. And so it wasn't until this moment in time that they could make their relationship go further, you know, almost as if like a father and a son, if you will. Yeah. You know, and it was a very touching moment when all the conversations and even just the moments that Robin seems to have with Amir, and the part where they're cooking the food together, you know, this is Robin's expertise. movies, and Amir hasn't seen that. So, like, he's learning more about what's really in a huge part of his culture and his family's culture, this gastronomical culture that he has, that he's sort of been pushed away because of this tragedy in his own family. And so this might be one of the first times for Amir. You remember how you tried to get the reservation and people were like, just get out of here. They kind of treated him like he was coming to the kitchen or something.
Yeah, well, that's where you feel bad. That's where you realize that he's trying to be more of like a high-rolling swindler, but he's not getting the respect, and he kind of gets kicked around. If it wasn't for Robin's truffles, no one would talk to this guy,
Robin is sort of like a man who can take hard knocks. At first he looks, maybe kind of, and as I said, somewhat broken initially. But then as the movie progresses, you realize that this man knows how to navigate this world already. And not only does he know how to navigate the world, he knows how to win. We talk about how we set examples for the younger generation. How does a young man become, a man and independent on his own? And, I think there's so many lessons to be learned, so many beautiful metaphors in this story for love and loss. I can't even say enough about this movie and the impact I think it's going to have really just on the cinematic world, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's definitely reinvigorated my very hopeful optimism I always have about writing and about film writing. This is the movie where the script is like, it's ringing in my ears while I'm watching it in the best possible sense, not in an annoying sense, obviously, because when the movie ends, I saw it in a small theater, there wasn't a lot of people, but the three people that I was with and then everyone else in the theater, no one moved when the credits started rolling. Obviously the ending is very impactful. On many levels, the very final shots. Really quickly, I'm going to say this one more time. Don't believe these crazy misconceptions. Just go see the movie. This is not a thriller. This is not a revenge movie. Sorry to burst your bubble to the marketing campaign that duped you into thinking this was a cage rage movie. It is not.
Bubbles and squeak. Smoked deal pie, chef. Hi, guys!
I want to get into Nicolas Cage's performance, so we'll segue into that from this scene, which is maybe the best written scene to me in the restaurant. Where he just pulls this dude's soul out of his body and slaps it around and places it right next to him.
At some point, Amir and Rob, in their journey, end up going, to other locations to still locate the pig. And what happens is, they go in, and of course, it's sort of like a Michelin star restaurant where, it's a la carte and, perfectly made dishes and presentation. And during the presentation, he asked to see the chef. Robin asked to see the chef. And it turns out that the chef was someone who worked for Robin at some point in their life. And Robin challenges his motivations for having this restaurant. And he does it in such a way, in a sense, saying, I know you. I know what you really wanted. I know what your dreams, I know what your hopes are, and I know what your aspirations are. Yeah. He remembers everything in detail, and this chef who recognizes Robin, of course, eventually, admits that his dream was something else, something different. Yes. Yeah. Something different from what he's doing now. And Robin very carefully tells him, you know what? If you keep this up, all these people and accolades and money and praise, if it's not for something that you have your heart set on, your dream, that every day you keep this sort of phony facade up, every day you're going to lose a little bit more of the real person you are.
Well, and it's so good that they established this restaurant in this really out of this world, eccentric. You remember, it's like the plates have like these bulbs on them, and they pull the bulbs off, and it's supposed to be like, I don't know if that's supposed to be smoke or
cloche. What is the thing it's called? Cloche.
I didn't know that was a thing, but I love it that because like, and then they just bring him like one scallop, and Nicolas Cage just takes his thumb and pushes it right into the scallop because it's just shit, Yeah. But, and that sets the table physically and metaphorically for that scene where, to me, that's the best moment of acting from Nicolas Cage, maybe
Mhm.
adaptation, you know, 19 years ago.
And I think that it was the most relatable scene to everyone who watches the film because it could be applied to everyone.
What a great choice he made to use that very strange kind of smile facial expression when he's just getting embarrassed in front of everyone in this restaurant, and he can feel his soul being ripped out, you know, because Nicolas Cage is just laying it all out there, because that's his uncomfortable face, you know. I love that decision. Instead of just being like, you know, this weird kind of traditional, oh, like this guy's real serious frown, he has this weird uncomfortable smile, and the camera just keeps going. Every time it goes to Cage and this guy, it gets closer and closer and closer to their faces. It's the example of the writing, the acting, the shots, and the editing working perfectly at the exact same time.
You know, I'm almost wondering if, you know, the idea or the concept of placing the story there is that Portland is sort of like a city of dreams, you know, and, you know, no matter what your dream is, you can make it sort of happen in Portland. And I know that people have said that, you know, like they want to keep Portland weird, but it's not so much the weird factor. It's what makes you happy. It does feel almost as if the location and the choice of the location implies that Portland is a special place.
Oh, and that's just another great thing about the script, is that the setting of the movie is its own character. Mira's making the breakfast for Robin, which is another really great scene. And that's where you get sort of this weird, okay, is Nicolas Cage going to rage out in this movie because he's talking about earthquakes and the end of the world?
Fucking knew you, man! The Joker's wild!
And you're like, what is going on with this? It's just another layer to his character, you know? The pigs who played the pig in Pig. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's two pigs. Brandy was the main star. And
Okay.
Cora was her understudy. And, I can't tell the difference. I don't know if Cora got any actual screen time, but Brandy was adorable. I fell in love with Brandy. I already knew how much I loved this movie by this point. When, like you said, when that scene happens where he goes to try to plead with the biggest jerk in the movie, I think that's Alan Arkin.
Yes, it is. Yes.
I was like, is that Alan Arkin? Because I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
And you know, and then he basically gets thrown out. Hey, get out of here. And then he's sitting at the car with Amir, and you find out, and this is spoilers. You can close your ears for a few seconds. You find out that the pig doesn't know shit about truffle hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I've maybe not put quite as eloquently as that, but you know, and Amir's like, well, what do you mean? Like, he's like, well, I know where they are. That's what I do. And then he says, well, what are we doing this for? And he says, I love her. And that right there sealed the deal for me. I'm like, okay, best movie in a long time. Don't tear up. God, I love this movie. Whether we see the pig again or not, that was it for me right there. Because that's just I relate to that very much, because I've always been a pet owner. Dogs are very important to me, and looking into Robin's entire life and soul and everything in that second, where it was never about his stupid truffle business. It was about getting back his best friend, you know? And I just, that made it eons stronger as a story for me.
After Rob has seen the relationship, or the poor relationship between Darius and Amir, and how Darius, you know, has unintentionally given up on his son because, you know, what's occurred between he and his wife has traumatized him so much that he, you know, I don't think it's anything he's doing on purpose. I think that he is hurting so badly, you know, maybe it is on purpose. I don't want to think it's on purpose. I think that he's hurting so badly that he doesn't know how to go forward. He doesn't know, very much like the Robin character.
Oh, absolutely.
He didn't know how to go forward and had to stop everything, you know. And so Darius looks like he's fine on the outside, but, you know, he's not. And
he's projecting more than anybody.
Definitely. And so at this point, not only is, you know, the Robin character sort of fighting to discover, you know, where this pig is, but he's also fighting in a way for Amir.
Yeah.
Because you know, once he realizes, you know, Amir tells him that his father thinks that, you know, he should be on his own, and you know, and then to hear the father say that, you know, Amir just isn't a man, so to speak. You know, it was painful to hear that. You know, why would he say that about his son?
Yeah.
And so, you know, he's kind of reflecting those things in himself. You know, this horrible thing happened to his family and he wasn't able to stop it. And so, you know, that feeling of, you know, helplessness that you get when a tragedy happens,
Yeah.
you know, you kind of, you know, it kind of affects the whole family. And I think that Robin knew at some point that there had to be some sort of intervention between Amir and his father. I don't know whether his plan and what he did in the end was what he was hoping it would accomplish. We don't really know what happens between Amir and his father.
No, we don't. Well, all three of our main characters are all completely rejecting the present, and they're rejecting something, and they have turned their back on something. You have Alan Arkin's character who is he's using this kind of manifested anger at his son and stuff like that as his sort of blanket. Amir, I love it that he won't go in to see his mother. We just see that he goes by and he stares at the door, and so you have three different stages of this grief, because then you see how far it can go 10 years, 12 years down the road when you see Nicolas Cage, who lives like a homeless person, but I mean, he has a little cottage, but I mean, he lives off the grid completely, doesn't talk to anybody, doesn't bathe. Like, he's gone so far in like not accepting what's happened to him that like Amir could see that and go like, oh my God, I'm heading in that direction, you know? And I love that, because they're all, even Alan Arkin, who's quote unquote the antagonist in this, they're all learning from each other in those last like 10 minutes of the movie. They're all learning things to maybe help each other, but it's left very ambiguous. And I love that father and son don't give each other a big hug. We don't need that, you know. That's not the way. That's not how this story thinks. You know, the story thinks much more like three-dimensionally than that, you know. But that dinner scene it's manipulative. He's manipulating him to taste those tastes again, but it still was very touching to me, even though it was short-lived. And what, you know, when you get these beautiful, thoughtful, touching scenes in this movie, isn't it a breath of fresh air when not every scene has to be followed up with some sort of musical number to try to push your emotions where they're already supposed to be going anyway? You don't need that push. The story's doing it for you. The facial expressions, the acting, it's doing it for you. I mean, there's great score in this movie, don't get me wrong, but the score is usually used as transitional things where it's happening between scenes. But I just love that scene. It's just quiet. He takes one bite of that, what was it, like quail or something? I don't know what it was.
It's a 5-star meal by one of the best chefs probably in the world. And he prepared it very carefully with Amir to show him, you know, a kind of, you know, prepare him for the fact that this was a very important meal. And it wasn't just about, you know, I'm going to give, you know, the same meal that your father and mother had, you know, 10 years ago. It was about the ritual of sort of reliving what might have happened right before this trauma that they had. And after everything was presented to Darius and to Amir, who helped with this meal, and Rob sits down with them, you can see the incredible moments of sort of like a meal nostalgia, like you said, that happens to Darius as he takes the first bite. And then he continues to eat the meal, and it looks delicious.
Yeah, it does.
And then, without any words being said, he has to leave the dinner table. I mean, that's the remarkable part that you're talking about, that just grabs you. You know, no words were needed. We know what's happening. We know because Amir told us in the story how amazing that night was. And his mother came home and told him how much the night meant to her. And of course, yes, the meal was important, but being with the father meant something to her. You know, the whole thing of being happy and having an experience that was unforgettable. And of course, the father has not forgotten.
No,
he has not.
No. And nor did he hesitate to bite into that. And it's like he knew he knew what it was going to trigger, but he still wanted that. He wanted that feeling, even though it hurt. I was hanging out with one of my friends yesterday that actually saw the movie with me last week, and we're like, what else was on that dinner plate? Like, I honestly didn't think when he said, get me these items, that it was going to be the ingredients. And
yeah, I had no idea either. I didn't know, and I was quite surprised. I said, oh wow, how cool did they work this into this story that, you know, it works out so perfectly. And then Amir finds out things about Robin along the way.
Yeah.
And then of course Robin is setting him up to have these connections. You know, it's and a lot of times in the gastro business, it's who you know. And so now they know he's associated with Robin Feld, so it's going to make his career easier. I mean, it's these little things that, you know, can make or break, you know, your career. And so to learn that, you know, Robin had lost his wife, to learn that, you know, everything going from one point to the next about different struggles and different situations, that he could sympathize even more now with Robin after knowing what's happened to him.
Absolutely. And just the small little things like that Amir did, getting him the ice pack at the end of that night after getting the crap beat out of his face, making him breakfast in the morning, most importantly, just listening to him, though, even though he's not being treated well at the beginning, you know. Let's break down these 3 chapters real quick too.
Yes.
So chapter 1, you have this amazing tart that the camera work. I knew I was going to love this movie when he's making that tart from beginning to end, and he gives half of it or most of it to the pig. Mm-hmm. But how great is that? Like just making that beautiful tart down, like on a Dutch oven, like over a fire.
Mom's French toast and deconstructed scallops. So this is when he's at Amir's place.
That's right. That's
like
right.
You mentioned. Right.
That's right, because the French toast, that's all I know how to make. That's what Mom made. And then the scallop, you're right, because that's the chapter name.
Only because I remembered it. Robin tells Amir to use stale toast to make the bread, or the garlic bread in the meal. Yeah. So, you know, and he didn't tell him in a mean way. He ate the meal. He was grateful for.
It was a trade secret. You could tell it was a trade secret. Yeah.
It was a trade secret, and I just like the delivery of it, because sometimes you need to know these things. It's like, oh, thank you for letting me know. Oh, yeah. I'll make a note of that, you know. And then the part 3, as you mentioned, is the a bird, a bottle, and a salted baguette.
That's right, the salted baguette. Yeah. And then that bottle of wine that looked probably really expensive, and I'm guessing went to waste.
Yeah, that was an expensive one. And how about how the screenwriters managed to fit in, you know, the outcome of his restaurant, you know, like whatever happened to that, and how, you know, of course, you know, they have the finest bakers in these restaurants, and she's still there, you know, she turned it into a bakery. That's what happened. And he asked for a very specific item, because that was the item that Darius's father and mother had that night, the salted baguette.
And you just think it's a throwaway line when you're watching the scene, like, oh, cool, I just want this thing. This movie's about cooking, so I just want this thing. Yeah, it's all placed perfectly. Yeah.
Yes. Probably one of his other chefs at the restaurant, or someone he bought from, you know, to use products in his restaurant for sure. Yeah. And then the, you know, where they didn't overdo it with her. You know, she's there. She sees he's alive. You know, they know he is alive. And, you know, she gives him this hug and, you know, kind of like letting him know, I'm always here for you. I'm always here for you, you know, and, you know, have no fear, you know, even though it looks like, as Edgar said, even though it looks like your name doesn't mean anything else in this town, in actuality, you know, they're secretly rooting for him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really only Darius at not at the very end, but during his sort of like angry, you know, sort of ultimatum thing about like, you know, get out of here, don't mess with me. That's the only person I think in the movie that goes like, no one cares about you anymore. Like, you're gone. Like, but that's so not true. Like, everyone would love if he came back out. They would just go nuts, you know, and it doesn't look like that's the path he's going to go down. But I do love how they wrap it where, like you were saying, like Amir has so much to learn from this guy. And it's like that final line to him, like, I'll see you Thursday, insinuates a little bit that at least he's going to start talking to him more and maybe give him some, who knows, some tutelage or something like that.
Well, this is very interesting that you managed to bring that up. And it's interesting only because in the beginning of the story, when we understand that Amir and Robin have an agreement, for, you get the truffles and I will pay you, whatever he pays him for that service.
Gives him like flour and like some cooking supplies. It's crazy.
Yeah, it may not be very much, right? It might be a barter system or something like that. And what's really interesting about it is that Amir seems to want to make a connection with Robin. But Robin is, he's a little guarded, and Amir doesn't like that. And so Amir offers to, can I bring you this? Would you like me to bring that? And Robin is almost, very standoffish, not mean, but, he's kind of like, I don't really have time for what you're asking me for. Yeah. And Amir responds, have a great day, asshole, like that. Yeah. Amir is not a bad guy. He's only responding the way that he feels he's being treated. And Amir needs someone. See, Amir needs someone.
Amir is picking Robin up from the bar because his car broke down, because he wants to hang out with him, not because he needs to protect his truffle business. He wants to hang out with him, and you don't really know that until later. You almost think that, oh God, what a nuisance this Robin guy is, but I need to keep him around because I need these truffles. No, he's happy to do it.
In the beginning of the story, when Amir takes Robin into the city, for the first time, and he kind of like, they do this really beautiful, I don't know the term, but while Robin is in Amir's car, it transitions from woods to the city, and it almost felt like some sort of magical part from the Wizard of Oz, where it's like you can hear that music that goes, and you can see the overpasses of bridges, and and all of a sudden it's like he was magically transported there, not driven there, but it felt like it was a magical transportation, even though we know Amir drove the car. Yeah. And so I thought that was a very interesting use for that scene. It definitely made it interesting. I'm wondering if it's supposed to mean something, in another way, maybe from a cinematographic point of view. Well, but I
think it's a great observation, because I noticed, I love the way that you put it, and I will see it differently that way, but I noticed, as you did, there's no traditional shots of two people in a car. All those shots were very strange, as if the camera was sitting at your feet sometimes, and a lot of them were these really side close profiles of Nicolas Cage's beaten face, and a lot of the camera work being done in the rearview mirror. It's almost like Nicolas Cage can't get out of his own world because his car only gets so far. It's like The Evil Dead, where Ash drives the car, he gets to the bridge and he can't go in.
But I also noticed that in some of the scenes, not all, but in some of the scenes, the camera work was purposefully not jarring, but just moved like in a more natural way.
Yeah.
So like, like a reverb, like if you turn the camera, it might have just a little bounce to it, just a little bounce. And we saw that in some of the scenes, and it didn't detract from the film at all. In fact, it felt more realistic because, it's not going to be 100% smooth on a dolly or on whatever you're using. The world is not like that. It's not 100% smooth all the time.
I like it. I'm with you. It adds a realistic quality to how a viewer watches something, how they approach something. Subliminally has so much to do with how the movie's shot. Fluid shots of Pirates of the Caribbean, it's fine because it's a glossy movie. It's a fantasy. It's not realistic. Go ahead and give me swooping shots and never give me shaky cam. I don't give a shit. But like Pig doing that in close-up moments, and the one scene where we almost get a cage rage,
and they still fucking taste like shit,
where he gets mad and he steals the guy's bike and he's like, "Rah!" Like he yells at him. We were so excited for that scene.
It was so funny.
Yeah. You want the camera moving that way because it's part of the experience. It's wrapped up in how the guy's head is, But if you watch some of our reviews, you know that this is my kind of movie. This is what gets me excited and gets me happy. And I teared up watching this movie, and not because of where the narrative went, just because it was so great to see something made so well by smart people, by talented people who made all the right decisions. And didn't insult anybody's intelligence, and really respected the art of filmmaking. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that Nicolas Cage, as far as I'm concerned, two other performances of his that I absolutely loved were in The Family Man and in Leaving Las Vegas. I think that this performance is better than those. And I also think that this performance plays to his, just his talents. He hasn't, or perhaps hadn't, as an actor, you're not always going to be approached by those roles that are going to give you, or play to your specialty or your ability. I mean, that's just not how it works. I mean, you try to get those roles, but, a lot of times actors can't get those roles. So, I know a lot of, fans will look and say, I don't know why this person's playing that role. I'm like, well, they're getting the roles that they can get. Not everyone can get all of those, those quality roles. And this one is the highest quality there is.
Yeah, and when you're on a tear of just producing bi-weekly dime store action movies like Kill Me Now or Kill Me Later, like he's in Redbox right next to John Cusack and Bruce Willis, and Chris Klein. It's like, then one of these comes along and it's Nicolas Cage or his agent or both going, okay, now let's do a real movie. We're paying the bills, but let's make a real movie now. So, and I think that's why people don't know what to make of it, because this John Wick but with a pig is just bullshit. Not what this movie is.
Who has my pig?
It intrigued me, and the reason why it intrigued me was because not just because of the pig, but because of the way they made Nicolas Cage look. And I thought, part of the look is also to offset people and make them stay away from him. And so, you have to ask yourself this question, why is he doing this? There's a reason why he wants, because the pig looked perfect. The pig looked like it had been washed and, cared very well for. But then if you looked at the Robin character, he wasn't taking care of himself. And so that was a clue, why isn't he taking the right care of himself? And there was a reason, and we find that out in the film, in a brilliant way. So I think that was a hidden message, while it might have been very clever to market it as, sort of a revenge film. It certainly is not.
I could see the struggle the marketing campaign might have had, because it is kind of a tough sell to just show footage. But they didn't throw on any of the Hans Zimmer drops.
And then of course, some of the clips from the film where he might be somewhat angry and say, "Where's my pig?" That's gonna make you think.
Truffle pig. Yeah.
I'm looking for a truffle pig.
You're making think that it's going in a different direction.
Well, and I noticed they show a lot of clips from the Fight Club scene where it's like really shady characters, and it's like, no, that's just like one tiny obstacle, This might be the best film I've seen this year. It's my favorite. It's definitely my favorite film since 2018, and I could see, because this is very rewatchable as well. I can just tell, because I want to see it again. There's so many great moments of rewatchability, and that's key to longevity. So,
yes.
And thank you. I'm so glad that you saw it. I'm so glad that you liked it pretty much as I did. So we could just sit here and gush about it, because I had nothing bad to say about it, So
one of the things that I was, I kind of was trying to think of how I could describe it in a different way, and I kind of said, you can't get something for nothing in this tough gastronomy world of Hard Knocks. And no one can navigate it better than Robin Feld. But even he has a heart, even he has a soft spot. And and I feel like that sentence alone, to try to describe what the film is about, I feel that is the description of that I would give the film.
I was gonna say, because the length of that is basically a synopsis. That was like the perfect synopsis that you put at the top of a treatment, that really was good. Yeah, you should be a jacket copywriter for Please come back if you want. Anytime you want to talk about movies, you know where we are.
I'd love to come back. Thank you.
And everybody, check out Rrr Mmmm on the Burrnetwork. I want to say Saturdays and Sundays, because technically it's midnight, but I like to say Fridays and Saturdays. But on the weekend at midnight, both days. Check her out on those, and thank you once again. I can't wait to do this again.
Yes.
Go see Pig, everyone, for Cinema Gulp. That is Rrr Mmmm, and I am Ben. We drink your cinema.